had the out-of-season program, and out-of-season program started pretty rough around the edges, not like I'd like, but we got better, throughout the entirety of the out-of-season program. Just wish we had started better. The spring practice, thought we started well, but depending on which portion of the program you look at, some areas have made improvement, others perhaps haven't. I think that, sitting in my seat, it's a little difficult in the spring because it's good against good. It's us against us. So, from my standpoint, for everything I see something good, then there's something bad happening, so I can't win. So I always come out of spring practice in a miserable state of mind, but that's the nature of it right now. But as I said, we're halfway through. Still have a long ways to go. A lot of things to improve upon, get better at in terms of some basic things like execution and assignment correctness. We've gotten a lot in, both offensively and defensively, and collectively with the special teams. We've got some guys that are out with injuries that have missed up to this point in time. That affects the continuity in all three phases of the game. Aside from that, let me answer whatever you have or try to, and we'll go from there.
What are your thoughts on the quarterbacks right now?
What are my thoughts on the quarterback? It's very competitive, and that's the way we like spring practice to be. It's you don't have an opponent to compete against or prepare for, so the depth chart is fluid. It's open. There really isn't an established depth at this particular point in time. The quarterback position, I think the obvious two front runners are certainly presenting themselves that way. Our biggest concern at the position is going to be the depth. Beyond that, I would say right now with two deep, two guys we came out of last year's season with are really have picked up where they left off, and very competitive. There isn't a number one right now, but between the two of them, we'll have a number one, and just want to keep it competitive. And I like their attitude and their approach towards it. They are very, very competitive, but they help each other by the same token. They're there for each other, and so there's that unification and selflessness that's significant. They've had their flaws, both in the passing game and the running game, but they are fewer and fewer. And like I say, they've pretty much picked up where they left off.
Coach, a lot of changes on the coaching staff. How different have things been this spring with all of that?
Well, nothing has really been different. I appreciate each one of them, as well as the returning coaches. I think the continuity has been excellent. There was no ruffles in the continuity. I mean, we went from the season to the out of season and into spring football very smoothly. I like the way they work together. That includes not just the new coaches, but the returning coaches as well. I mean, like I say, there is great continuity. I think they work together well. They all have an impact. I mean, there's coordinators and co-coordinators, but it's a togetherness type thing. The continuity and the capacity for each of them to play their role and interact with each other has really, has been impressive to me. Anyway, so they're getting along quite well, and I think the players appreciate each of the new coaches as well. Yeah.
Maybe it's a little too early to tell, but with the new coordinators, will they be putting a new stamp, so to speak, on what you're doing offensively and defensively?
We're looking at we're looking at we always do look at some new things, and that's what not all, but that's part of what spring practice is all about, and trying to look at things that you think might have a place with the personnel we have, and I think that's what creates any type of change. I've always said I'm not in favor of change for change's sake, but if it has an impact, a positive impact, then I certainly am in favor of it. Not very much in the way of change, but we're looking at some things on both sides of the ball at this point in time, and some of it I think it looks like it may fit and we'll have some carryover, and some of it obviously will not. That's pretty consistent with past springs. Yeah.
Coach, you have a lot of experience back at running back with Alex Barnes and Dalvin Mormack and Justin Stillman, but I'm curious about Mike McCoy and what he's shown compared to that group this spring.
Mike McCoy is a very talented player, very physical player, very undisciplined player. 2 out of 3 doesn't work. When he gets the third order of business in place, then he'll be a very fine player.
You've had, I guess, there'll be a new look at receiver this year. Just how's everything going in spring practice at that position, and who have you seen step up? And
well, it's kind of interesting because there's some youth there. Don't have a plethora of experience returning. You'd like to think a guy like we'll say Isaiah Zuber, coming back, returning starter, but is kind of just hasn't made the consistent improvement that he's very, very capable of. He can play at even a higher level, and just hasn't. He's kind of gotten himself comfortable in a spot where he needs to continue to grow because he's very, very capable of it. I've liked Landry Weber, who's a new young guy. Hasn't really played for us. His brother Stanton played here. And works on our staff, but he is really a very, very consistent young guy, does all the right things. Last couple of days he struggled a little bit, but 75-80% of the practice time or practices collectively that he's had have really been eye-catching, and he's made some headway. Aside from that, it's just inconsistency. The young guy, Strickland, who was a scout squad player last year and was impressive, has good size, runs well, started to come along during spring practice, and the other day and after practice I paid him a compliment, and he hasn't been the same since. So you got to be careful about throwing those compliments around too much to some of the younger guys. They don't handle them real well, but he has the capabilities. He just hasn't gotten himself there, and part of it is the capacity to be able to mentally stay into the game, snap after snap. And there's some other guys, but just really haven't progressed to the level of consistency that we need. Don't quite have the depth there that we want right now to play with, at least to play with 4 wide receivers.
Coach, 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, your freshman and sophomore class combined for 135 starts, the most that you've had in your time at K-State. Last year, that number went to 127 starts between freshmen and sophomores. This team continues to grow, and now you have a pretty solid junior class right now with this group. Is this a more mature team? Have you noticed?
Not as mature as I would like for it to be, but I think you know me, and nothing is exactly the way I would like for it to be, and doesn't mean it can't be and shouldn't be and could be. I think part of that really comes from having a few guys out in terms of injuries. That the continuity of things doesn't really come together quite as readily as you would like, when that takes place. But again, experience is experience is just a word. Experience can be before experience and can be good experience. As I said before, it's not about it's not about last year or previous years. It's every year is different. The dynamics are different regardless of how many people you have back. That has very little bearing on it.
Coach, excuse me, with DJ Reed turning pro, obviously a pretty big gap left on your defense. Has Duke Shelley really stepped up and taken on that number one cornerback spot? And who are some other cornerbacks that you've been impressed with potentially filling that role?
Well, Duke has done a good job this spring. I would say this is probably the best spring that he has had in my recollection. I think he's making improvements. Still has room at the top, so to speak. I think at the other spot, A.J. Parker is back and was kind of a part-time starter when we had injuries last year. He started inside, played on the outside as well. We're looking at him there. Walter Neal, is a young guy that has kind of caught our eye during the course of the spring, so far. So we're kind of, looking at that. That's probably a major issue for us, is how we fill that spot.
Also, just real quick, could you clarify, because you mentioned Carlos Strickland and when you were talking wide receivers, but he's not on the roster. Is he with the team then?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Never got a chance to ask you this when it happened, but when you decided to go with Andre and Blake at those coordinator positions, they're both of them being first-time guys, what gave you such confidence that they were ready to step up and take on those roles?
Well, I think for the most part, it's the capacity to have people that they can work with. As I said, you take the offensive side of the ball. You've got the experience back with Charles Dickey. Been with us for quite some time now. You've got Colin Klein, who played here and really has a good understanding of the offense, and of course Andre played here as well. It's a collective effort, between the three of those in regards to coordinating the offense, and that's what I say. I'm really proud and appreciative of them because they all work together so very, very well. It's really a pleasure to see them interact as they do. On the defensive side, Brian Norwood joining the staff. Blake has a good understanding of what we do defensively, and is able to, he's worked at both up front with linemen and with linebackers as well, so he has a good understanding in that respect. And Brian brings, excellent experience in the secondary, so the two of them are able to work very closely together, and that's very beneficial for us. So I think it's the I don't want to use the word or duplicate the word coordination, but just the ability to interact collectively together in order to come up with the best use of schemes as it relates to our personnel, and all that goes along with coordinatorship. So it's been smooth up to this point in time.
Where does Daquan Patton fit in at linebacker right now, and what does that look like?
Well, Daquan is probably right now he's got a ways to go. I like his effort. He is probably he's inconsistent in what he's accomplishing right now, but as far as his effort, it's probably the best of the group, linebacker core. And I appreciate that part of it. He's trying diligently to learn the system in a short period of time, and is making headway in that regard.
Who else is there at linebacker with him right now?
Well, Sullivan is probably next in line. Sam Sizlove, is certainly going to be a factor there. Ian Rudzik may have a chance there. So.
Coach, as your level of self-scouting reached another level with two new coordinators this offseason,
I'm sorry, I missed this.
Looking inward at what you guys do and your own evaluations of play calling, has that changed during this offseason?
No, I don't. I'm not. Yeah, I still don't know that I totally understand the question, but are we going to alter how we put schemes on the field at the present time? No. If that's the question, I'm not sure.
I wanted to ask about, you obviously lost a lot with the special teams, your starting place kicker, starting punter, top 2 returners. How are things going there so far this spring?
Not going as well as I would like, and you hit the nail on the head right now. We're trying to sort through a number of young guys that we have in regards to finding the specialist part of it. And that's been a struggle, a very, not that there's not some capabilities there, it's just the inconsistency. Punters, place kickers, holders, snappers, etc. All that we've lost, and so there's and the guys that we lost were there for an extended period of time. So it's not like they were one and out. These are 3- and 4-year starters that we're replacing. So it's going to take a little time to get all that house in order.
I also wanted to ask, the only kind of addition to the staff that's kind of from outside of your tree was Brian Norwood. What has he kind of brought to the room since he's joined you?
Well, Brian is is an energetic coach, and he's a very likable coach. He's a very excellent person. I think the players seem to be responding to him well, seem to like him a great deal, which doesn't, that's not necessarily the most important thing, but nevertheless it has some significance. He's got a great deal of experience, been in the game for an extended period of time. When he was at, I've known about Brian for a long time. When he was at Penn State, I think he was there 10, 11, 12 years, something like that, with Joe Paterno. And Joe had always, spoken highly of him, so he was always kind of on the back burner, when the need arose. So has a good knowledge of the game as well, and like I say, impressive on the field because he really is active with his players.
Coach, following up on Coach Norwood, he had some time at Baylor, and in this evolution of passing games in college football, how important is that to have him have the exposure on a day-to-day basis to those type of offenses?
Well, I think that brings up a good point, and I think it is. It was significant. I like the balance in his past history, his track record. When he was at Penn State, I mean, that was they played the game in a box up there, and then to get it opened up at Baylor, I think he saw both sides of the fence, and then he saw being at Tulsa, where maybe the talent level wasn't quite as prolific as it might have been at the other schools that he was at. So he's seen an awful lot of what college football is about.
Coach, I'm curious about defensive tackle and replacing Will Geary. I know Trey's back, but who can you shed some light on who else is being competitive there?
Well, Joe Davies and Drew Wiley probably right now would round out the top 3. One of the guys that probably the individual in our program right now that I think that has been most consistent in regards to consistent improvement throughout the course of the out-of-season program and now in spring football, has probably been Trey Deshawn. Trey has been very, very impressive to me, and I don't know if we got sidetracked by having Will Geary there or not last year, but I've seen what I consider to be marked improvement by Trey, and the fact that it would be pretty hard to uproot him from a starting position. He still remains very, very competitive day in and day out, like his work habits. He comes to practice to work, and he's still going when the whistle blows. So I appreciate him.
You just jinxed him, right?
Pardon?
You just jinxed Trey DeJean. You just jinxed him.
Yes. But I haven't said that to him. So if you'll do me a favor and not print it, then I'm safe.
How about Alex Barnes really quickly? I think we'll get a chance to speak to him today. I was curious how he's doing.
Alex is doing fine, and by the way, he has a tutoring session and will not be able, I didn't tell you, Kenny, will not be able to make it, so I apologize for that. But Alex is doing well. Eric Hickson has done a very nice job with our running backs. They have been very, very competitive this spring. I think on the offensive side of the ball, that's the group that I feel the strongest about right now. And obviously having, returning guys that everybody talks about is beneficial. But, I've seen them step up their level of intensity. I think they run harder with the ball right now. They're more active blockers. I like the way they compete right now, and it is very competitive. We've seen all of them do some very, very fine things.
Following up on the backfield, you're looking for a new fullback and also tight ends. How do those two tie together, and what's the depth chart look like at those spots?
Well, again, it's like virtually every aspect of the depth chart, very, very fluid, maybe even more so there at the tight end. Lenners, has done a nice job. Gammon, has done a pretty nice job as well. And they work kind of interchangeably with that. We were looking hard at Mason Barta, who transferred in, and Mason has been out for a little bit, and so we're not getting the chance to see everything we want to see. Young guy Luke Sowa came in, S-O-W-A, came in as a transfer student, and we're taking a look at him right now. So we're just really uncertain at those particular spots.
With Dalvin Warmack, I'm sure it doesn't happen too often where a player says he's going to transfer and then a few months later says he's going to stay. What went into that process to convince him that this was the place for him, and what's he been looking like in practice?
Well, I think a lot of, I think you're wrong about that. I think a lot of guys, the process goes through their mind, where can it be better for me? And and that went through his mind. I'm sure it goes through a lot of other players here in our program as well as it does in a lot of other programs. That's why you see so many transfers, across the country. I think for Dalvin, it was just the long and the short of it was, in time, and he's a bright young guy and has a good family, and I think they were in, some very deep discussion, about it over a period of time, and sometimes it takes time, and just came to the realization that where would things be better for me, A, in terms of opportunities to play, and B, in terms of other things that go along with the nature of the game and what goes on in the program and how it benefits young people, and that was the conclusion that they came to. And then he has a younger brother that is coming into the program, coming out of high school and coming into the program. So I'm not sure who influenced who in that respect, but.
I was going to ask, when it comes time to, actually make the decision on who the starting QB is going to be, how much input and influence are Andre and Colin going to have on that in terms of, I assume it is going to be your final call, but I didn't know how much will you lean on them just to get their take on it?
Well, I listen to them like I listen to any coach that we have, in our program, and I value, their judgment as well. The brief answer to your question is yes, I will listen, certainly.
And then I guess
I'll listen to you if you have some thoughts about it. So.
I don't think you ought to listen to me.
Like I said, I'll listen.
But I guess as a follow-up to that, with both of them, where are the areas of improvement for both Alex and Skylar that you're really wanting to see by the time you guys exit the spring game?
Say it one more time.
Where are the biggest areas of improvement for each of them, for Alex and for Skylar, that you want to see come the end of
we
this?
need to see?
Yeah.
I think more than anything else, and this sounds like an easy out answer and covers a lot of ground, but it's just that consistency. I mean, both of them have proven that they can throw the ball well, they can be accurate, they can go through their progressions, etc. Although progression is the hardest thing for a quarterback really to learn, and so they always need great improvement on that. But they're good about those things. They're good about making decisions in the running game, etc. It's just the consistency of it, and being able to do it snap after snap after snap after snap. Probably always, and this, would be true with any quarterback that we've ever had, is being able to have that high degree of capability to redirect our offense, get ourselves in the right place, number one is get out of the wrong place, and secondly is to be able to get ourselves into the right choices.
Is the quality and strength you have, and also the depth at defensive end, as strong as it is perceived to be, and how have those guys progressed this spring?
Well, I question some of the evaluation that you did. That they haven't proven that to me yet. I think right now the guy that is most consistent with our defensive ends probably is Kyle Ball. I like the fact that he's a young guy that he consistently plays hard. He's a bright young guy, makes good decisions. I think probably the other guys, it's just a matter of the consistency part of it. Whether it's Reggie Walker or Bronson Massey, guys that just snap is good, take a play off. Snap is good, take a play off. We can't do that. So, we've just got to maintain or regain the consistency that it takes to play the ball game with them.
Along those same lines, you didn't mention Wyatt Hubert. Is he in the mix?
Wyatt is, yes, and I have really been impressed with him. Suffers from the same thing. It's just and for him, not for the others, but for him. They're kind of at three different levels, but for Wyatt, just being the youngest of the group, it's a little more, mind-boggling for him. He has the least amount of experience. Bronson Massey probably is next on the list. Not a great deal of experience, but he does have some, and but still lacks the consistency. And then Reggie Walker, who's been a starter, is has all the capabilities in the world and just is not consistent with it right now.
Coach, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have maybe 4 young guys in the defensive backfield who came in this spring: McGee, Patterson, Thomas, and Jones. Have any of them stood out for you or shown much to this point?
Well, I think each of them have shown some promise, that allows us to understand that they're good young guys to have in the program. None of them have really stepped forward to the degree that we would like to see at this point in time. But then again, it's something that you have to realize. I mean, their only preparation for spring practice in the history of their lives for us, has been in the out-of-season program, and during the out-of-season program, because the NC2A and all their infinite wisdom don't give you a chance to spend much time with them. So they're in the learning process, but capabilities are there.
Coach, I'm sure considering his injury, he's probably not doing much this spring, but can you provide an update on how Kendall Adams is getting along?
Kendall's doing fine. It's just keep his weight under control. Loves to eat, but he is doing well. Stays very focused on what he's doing, and has been a big asset and a help to younger guys as well.
Would you expect he'll be able to practice once you get to August?
Or sooner.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about Zach and Eric coming back to the staff, what's impressed you most from their time away, now that they're coming back, just how much maybe they've picked up about the game and how much more maybe they knew about it compared to when they'd been with you last?
Well, I don't know that I could. I don't know that I could answer that question. I don't know the difference from one. I'd like to think that certainly they, and I know they have. Certainly they've gained some knowledge. Got to make sure it's the right knowledge, to fit into our program. But I've been very pleased and impressed. Zach, hasn't been gone long, at all. So, there isn't, and he's a bright young guy. So, I mean, he remembers, knows exactly what we do and how we do it. Eric has been gone longer, but had an opportunity to work at Akron with Coach Bowden, and I've always had respect for the Bowden family. And I think that was beneficial for him. And I love, I just love his enthusiasm with our players, with our running backs, and not, he has the capacity to be extremely demanding, and still in such a way that the player understands that he is trying to benefit them, and that's helped a great deal.
No, I was just curious with I guess Dalton also recovering, as well as Kendall, and they're your two most veteran players.
Yeah, he's doing well, and both of them are, do some of the drills that we have, and we just, gosh, but he has been, Dalton is a good young guy helping, younger players. He's kind of a coach in uniform, so to speak, and does a nice job of that, very conscientious about it. Yeah, but he's doing fine. Okay, thank you all.